Inside the frozen, shattered factories of Stalingrad, combat was measured in meters, cleared rooms, and sometimes single staircases. Look at these three soldiers. Images like this fix the battle in history as a pure test of endurance, a localized clash of willpower where the last army standing in the rebel claimed the victory. But far to the west, a slow breakdown of supply logistics had already begun to dictate the end of the fight. The focus on the city center left the vanguard reliant on a support network that was already failing. This map reveals the massive scale of the Eastern Front in mid-1942. A 1,200-kilometer gap separated advancing forces from their primary European railheads. That distance created extreme latency. Supplies traveled in sluggish, vulnerable pulses. Every kilometer forward meant days of lag. Faced with this friction, German High Command prioritized capturing the symbolic and industrial heart of Stalingrad as quickly as possible, leaving their northern and southern flanks unconsolidated. To maintain momentum, the core armored units pushed into the urban zone. They left an expansive perimeter in the hands of Allied units, like these soldiers, identifiable by their distinct rounded helmets, who lacked heavy anti-tank weapons and mechanized support. The Soviet defense adapted through absorption. Instead of launching immediate counterattacks, they traded space for time, funneling reinforcements across the river just fast enough to bog down the advance. This produced a skewed landscape. A tactically dominant vanguard fighting street to street became dependent on a starving, overstretched perimeter. That imbalance forced a second decision chain in logistics allocation. With supply lines already strained, Axis Command chose to push incoming fuel and ammunition straight into the city to sustain their forward momentum. By feeding the vanguard, they starved the periphery. The mobile reserve units stationed on the flanks, the forces required to repel an armored breakthrough, were left without the fuel to maneuver or the shells to fight. You can see the contrast on this map. While the Axis resupply loop stretched over 1,000 kilometers and took weeks to complete, the Soviet forces operated on interior lines. By withdrawing to the Volga River, they shortened their effective supply routes to mere days. Reinforcement speed mattered as much as total tonnage. The Soviet command could rotate fresh units in days, while German command waited weeks for a single train. We see the localized reality of those shorter supply loops here, as Soviet workers construct a log bridge over the icy river. It's a rough adaptation that kept their forward units alive. Taking city blocks gave the Axis commanders a sense of progress, but that tactical dominance inside the city meant nothing while the surrounding mobility corridors slowly eroded. In November 1942, the tension in those overextended lines finally snapped. Soviet High Command initiated a counter-encirclement. They bypassed the heavy fighting in the city center and targeted the structural weakness created by the previous months of logistical neglect, the flanks. Look at this T-34 pushing through the snow. The poorly supplied Allied formations on the perimeter were overwhelmed, and the defensive lines collapsed in a matter of hours. This map shows the resulting chaos. As the defensive lines snap and these arrows pierce the flanks, German command lost contact with the periphery. As those thrusts hook behind the city, they draw a hard, inescapable ring, isolating 250,000 soldiers. In modern maneuver warfare, the strength of your center is irrelevant if you cannot hold the perimeter. The stability of an army's edges dictates the survival of its core. Once that circle closed, the nature of the battle inverted. Logistics transformed from a support system into a weapon of starvation. See this Ju-52 transport plane, grounded in the snow alongside horse-drawn carts. The failure to resupply the trapped army by air meant daily deliveries fell far below the minimum tonnage required to keep the soldiers alive. Without fuel, the armies stopped functioning. They could not reposition their artillery to fire back, they could not evacuate their wounded, and they lacked the mechanized strength to launch a breakout. This soldier captures that degradation. A once mobile maneuver unit was reduced to freezing, isolated pockets, disconnected from the wider war. On this map, you can see the relentless math of their situation. The outer encirclement ring slowly compresses inward, turning the terrain they fought to capture into a trap. The end of the battle arrived as a quiet, steady cessation of function, as supply levels dropped below the threshold of human survival. We see the physical consequence of that math here, in this winding line of prisoners marching off into the snow, their operational capability exhausted. The fate of these men proves that strategic outcomes are decided at the farthest edges of logistics networks. When an army pushes its operational depth past its ability to maintain supply coherence, tactical success loses its meaning.